Okay, picture this. It's 1994. You have a highly successful Wall Street executive, someone who literally has everything going for him, right? And he decides to walk straight into his boss's office and walk away from a guaranteed, safe, six-figure career. And why? To sell books. On a website? I mean, at the time, the internet was barely a blip on the radar for most people. And let me tell you, the experts laughed. They genuinely thought he had lost his mind. His parents even invested basically all of their life savings into this wild idea, knowing full well there was a massive, massive chance they were going to lose every single penny. For years, the company made almost zero profit. Newspapers were predicting its imminent collapse, and competitors just scoffed at the whole thing. Yet today, that tiny online bookstore from a garage has become one of the most valuable, transformative companies in human history.
And, this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate crossroads of success. On one hand, you have the dream most people spend their entire lives chasing: Wall Street security, a prestigious job, and a perfectly clear, bright future. It is the absolute definition of the safe path. But then, you look at the reality of what it actually takes to build a trillion-dollar empire. You're trading all of those solid guarantees for a garage internet bookstore, putting your family's life savings on the line, and staring directly into the face of an overwhelming chance of failure. It sounds completely insane, right? But Jeff Bezos' success wasn't some product of insanity, and it certainly wasn't just blind luck. It was built on a very specific set of principles.
So, welcome to this explainer. Today we're going to extract 3 foundational mindset frameworks from the core rules that built Amazon: taking big risks, obsessing over customers, and thinking long-term.
All right, let's dive right into this. Framework number 1, take big risks. The framework that changes absolutely everything. To really understand how a trillion-dollar empire starts, we have to look at the catalyst. Bezos had this impressive salary and prestige, but he stumbled across a single mind-bending statistic: 2,000%. In the early 1990s, internet usage wasn't just growing, it was exploding by more than 2,000% every single year. Most people totally ignored it, brushing it off as some passing fad for computer nerds, but Bezos didn't. This specific number convinced him he was witnessing a literal world-reshaping opportunity. He knew that to capitalize on a 2,000% growth curve, he had to leave his security behind. But how do you actually make the psychological leap to quit your amazing job for a totally unproven technology?
Well, he did it by asking himself this exact question. When his boss advised him to stay on Wall Street, Bezos deployed what he calls the regret minimization framework. He asked himself, when I'm 80 years old, what decision will I regret? Will I regret leaving a comfortable job, or will I regret never trying to be part of the internet? Framed that way, the answer became instantly obvious. Refusing to try was actually a much bigger, much more dangerous risk than failing. That's the mindset shift that prompted him to pack his bags, move all the way across the country, and set up shop in a garage with zero guarantees. It's fascinating to realize that sometimes the absolute biggest risk you can possibly take is refusing to take one at all. Moving on to our second framework, obsess over customers, the massive shift from competing to serving.
Look, taking a massive risk is really just gambling if you don't have laser-sharp focus. Once Bezos took the leap, he needed an engine to drive his innovation. If you ask almost any CEO out there what keeps them awake at night, they are totally competitor-obsessed. They're constantly trying to figure out how to beat the other guy and pump up short-term earnings. But Bezos flipped the script entirely to become customer-obsessed. He didn't ask, how do we beat rivals? He asked, how do we make life easier for our customers? He shifted the entire corporate mindset from asking, what can we get, to what can we give? And when you prioritize making life easier and earning trust, well, that trust begins to compound in ways that traditional marketing simply cannot buy.
Now, what's really wild about the actual innovations born from this obsession, things like one-click purchasing, allowing customer reviews even when they were brutally negative, lightning-fast delivery, ridiculously easy returns, and the creation of Prime, is that many of these features were heavily criticized by financial analysts when they launched. Why? Because they actively hurt Amazon's short-term profits. Shipping things for free via Prime was incredibly expensive, but Bezos approved them anyway. He understood that while competitors were busy chasing the immediate dollar, Amazon was chasing unmatched customer satisfaction. They were building an absolute fortress of loyalty, knowing that the profits would eventually follow the trust.
So I want you to just pause for a second and think about this. If nobody paid you today, would people still appreciate the value you create? It's a heavy question, right? But it's a brilliant pattern interrupt to apply to your own career, your own business, or whatever skill you're developing right now. Your answer to this question says significantly more about your long-term future than your current income does. Because if you're purely extracting value rather than creating it,
Your success has a hard ceiling.
Which brings us perfectly to our third and final framework. Think long-term. Measuring success in decades.
We live in a society that is fundamentally addicted to instant gratification. We want six-pack abs in 6 weeks and a thriving business in 6 months, right? But the business blueprint fundamentally rejects that timeline. Just looking at Amazon's history, they launched in 1994 with almost no profit. As we move into the late 90s and early 2000s, instead of maximizing profit just to please Wall Street, Bezos aggressively funneled billions of dollars into massive warehouses, deep technology, and physical infrastructure. Analysts were screaming at him, literally calling these investments reckless and predicting Amazon's downfall. But he wasn't building for the next quarter. He was building for the next generation. Decades later, those exact early investments that everyone criticized became an unassailable trillion-dollar competitive moat. No one could catch up because no one else had started building the infrastructure 20 years ago.
So the crucial takeaway here is this. Success is almost never the result of one single extraordinary genius decision. It's the result of hundreds, thousands of ordinary decisions repeated consistently over time. It's like skipping one workout won't ruin your health, but skipping them for years definitely will. Reading one book won't make you a genius, but reading 100 just might. The people who achieve extraordinary, world-changing things aren't necessarily the smartest people in the room. They're simply the ones who are willing to stay committed to their framework long after everyone else loses patience and quits.
So, we've covered taking immense risks, obsessing over the value you give to your customer, and stretching your timeline out over decades. But to truly master this blueprint, there's one more piece, something most people spend their entire lives desperately trying to avoid. Look at this, the $170 million disaster. That is the exact amount of cash Amazon lost on the catastrophic failure of the Amazon Fire Phone. But Jeff Bezos didn't hide from it. He actively celebrated it. Now, why on earth would a brilliant CEO celebrate setting $170 million on fire? What is the hidden power of catastrophic failure? Well, it forces you to completely rethink how you handle your own missteps. And we're going to unpack exactly why massive failure is a mandatory part of exponential success in our next explainer.